Hello everyone, welcome to today's session where we are going to look at the poem The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. He was an Irish poet, and this poem is one of the most famous and the most quoted poems by Yeats. It was written in 1919, just after the end of the World War I, the time when people were utterly restless and hopeless. And there is also a reference to Bible. There is a biblical reference, Second Coming. In the biblical revelation, there is a prophecy about the second coming of the Christ, about the return of Christ. So let's start the poem. I'm reading it for you. Turning and turning in the widening gyre. The word gyre here we need to understand at first. The word gyre means circular motion. It is a vortex, circular motion, and this is a concept given by Yeats about the creation of world. According to him, world this world is made up of circular motion. And to understand it well, I want to show you the figure which Yeats has presented to give his theory of the creation of world. At first we will understand this, then we'll proceed with the poem. So according to Yeats, the world is made up of interlocking circles, as you can see in this figure. These are interlocking circle, and the history, these are the cycles of history. These circles represent the cycles of history. Means uh, when the circle starts from the origin, from the point, and it moves and moves and moves on, and it reaches up to the last circle, which represents the end of an era. I hope you are getting that these interlocking circle, you can see the point from where the circle starts, and when it moves on and it reaches up to the last circle, it is widening, it is becoming broad, it is spreading far away, it is spreading from its origin. That means it is widening, and as it widens and widens, and as it reaches up to the last circle, it is the end of an era, as according to Yeats, as he has given this theory. So again, we should move back to the poem. Here, widening gyre. Turning and turning means there is a movement, there is a movement in the widening gyre. Circular motion is widening, so it has come up to its widening. That means uh, an era is coming to an end. In a very, it is said in very complex way, as you will find that this poem is loaded with many theories, concepts and allusions. So here too, this is a very, in a very simple way we can say that according to Yeats, an era is coming to an end, a civilization is coming to an end. And what is the situation? So first line, I hope that it makes sense now. Turning and turning in the widening gyre. Now the time is passing by, and it has come up to its widening, up to its last circle. In a very simple way we can say, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Now here again one more imagery he has presented here. Falcon is a bird, and falconer is a trainer who trains falcon to do some tasks. But here, falcon represents human civilization, falcon represents humanity. And the situation is the which here the speaker is describing a horrific situation where the falcon, the which is human civilization, has lost its contact from contact with falconer. Falconer is directive forces, all the creative directive forces which gives direction to the humanity, which sets it in a specific purpose. Those all creative forces has lost its contact with the falcon, has lost its contact with those creative forces. So the falcon cannot hear the falconer, so it is a situation which is out of order. Falcon is roaming here and there free without any set purpose. So this is the thing which Yeats is conveying here. The falcon cannot hear the falconer means it is a situation of utter chaos. When falcon cannot hear, falcon has lost its contact, falcon has disconnected from the Faulkner. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Things fall apart. Things are collapsing, things are going very wrong. They are losing its directions. Things are falling apart. Things are going wrong. The center cannot hold. Here, the word center, we can take the principles, the fundamentals, the base of the society or civilization. It has failed now. It has failed to have its hold on the people. People are no more relying on those principles or traditions or fundamentals. They have lost their faith, as it was written in World War First, and after that, such was the psyche of the people, that they have lost all their faith in those established systems, because the World War has happened, which caused the killing of multiple peoples, and millions people were murdered and killed, and now the people were utterly skeptic about even the established values and systems, morals and ethics, everything. So the center cannot hold. Center has failed to have its hold on the people. People are utterly restless and helpless, and they are in turmoil. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Anarchy here means lawlessness, orderlessness. There is complete disorderness, as people have lost their faith. Falcon, humanity is not listening. They are not in the position to have any contact or connecting with those things which they were relying upon up to now. So mere anarchy, there is complete anarchy is loosed upon the world. It is prevalent. What is prevalent? Mere anarchy, lawlessness, and disorderliness. The blood deemed tide is loosed. Here, this phrase, blood deemed tide, connotes to bloodshed or violence. Only the violence is prevailing. It is everywhere, and it is also a psychology of man who is thirsty for the human's blood of his fellow humans. So blood dim tide is loosed everywhere. There's violence and bloodshed everywhere, massacre, a huge massacre, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The rituals of purity, the ceremony, celebration of purity, celebration of innocence is drowned. It is destroyed. There is no innocence has left now. So I think it is making sense to you now. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. The situation is utterly turbulent and tumultuousness. You can sense that how horrific the situation is. Yeats is describing it in very concise, very loaded terms. Every line is very loaded, and but very aptly he is describing everything. Next line. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So here the speaker seems to mourn over the fact that best has resigned to do something, to take any step. They have surrendered. They have lost all their confidence, all their conviction. They are not in the position to do something. Who are the best? Who are possessing the good values like kindness and goodness, and those who are working, who are full of activity, and who are loud in their activities. They who are active, but they are worst. They are active, but they are worst. So the worst, the evil, the anarchic, that is, those are the people. Those people are full of passion, and the best are lacking confidence in their actions. So such is the situation. Such chaotic situation is prevailing, and it was the time, very clear that it was the time just after the World War First. So let's move to the next stanza, as this poem is divided into two stanzas. It is a short poem but very loaded and very profound in its expression. And we have completed first stanza, which consists of 8 lines. And now next stanza we are going to begin. Let's see. Surely some revelation is at hand. Now Yeats is saying that the situation has become so out of order and chaotic, and he is sensing, as he was he was having a very great interest in mysticism, occultism. So he was interpreting the situation as per his belief system, that this highly disordered system is not accidental. It is not on accidental proportions. It has something to reveal. It is apocalyptic. Apocalyptic means something revelatory. So something revelatory is about to happen, something very new, and something is about to undone. And that's why he has applied this word this word, surely. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. Now, very directly, he has used this biblical reference, second coming, which where there is this prophecy about the coming of Christ, return of Christ, in order to save the worthy. So, surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. Uh, so here Yeats is confident enough in about some revelations, the second coming. Now this phrase, he has applied exclamatory mark, that means it triggers in him something. Hardly are those words out. So here Yeats is saying that hardly I spoke this phrase, this word, these words, the second coming, these words are out, this triggers something mystical in me. I falls out from my physical existence. Next line, let me read. When a vast image excuse me, the second coming, hardly are those words out. So Yeats is saying that as I uttered these words, as I spoke these words, hardly are those words out, when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi. Now, at first, we must be familiar with this phrase, Spiritus Mundi. This Spiritus Mundi conveys the world spirit. This means collective consciousness, a shared consciousness by all human being. And it was Yeats' belief that we all have this collective consciousness. Every being is capable to have insights and visions in this world spirit. We are capable to see in our mind, which is a storehouse of many archetypal, or which is a storehouse of many images, that is called Spiritus Mundi. And Yeats is saying that as I uttered these words, the second coming, I happen to enter in my that space, which is called collective consciousness. And when a vast image out of, and he had some visions, and he will share what he sees in that shared consciousness, in that soul of the universe. So I think you have you it's this line is clear to you. When a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Now what is he watching in his mind's eye? Somewhere in the sands of the desert, what he is visualizing, he is watching a desert. Somewhere in sands of the desert, what is he watching in the sands of the desert? Next line, a shape with lion body and the head of a man. What he observed there, what he visualizes there, he is visualizing a creature, a figure who has lion's body and a man's head. And this figure in mythology is Sphinx. In mythology, this such figure who has lion's body and man's head, it is called Sphinx. And he sees a Sphinx in a desert. And what Sphinx is doing? A gaze blank and pitiless as the sun. And what he notices, what Yeats or the speaker, what the speaker is noticing, that he notices that this creature, the gaze, the look, the stare of this creature is blank. That means it has no emotion, and it is pitiless. It is lack of any mercy. It has no pity. That means it's cruel. It has a cruel gaze as the sun. is moving its slow thighs, and it is moving. Now we are discussing what Yeats or the speaker is visualizing in his spiritus mundi, means in his collective consciousness, in his mind's eye. What is he observing, that we are discussing? Are you getting? So what is he watching? Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, and that creature is moving slowly. Its slow thighs means it is moving in a very slow motion, and while all about it. And what more he sees? He sees then he sees the sphinx is moving, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds, and all around this creature, who are hovering around, who are fluttering around, indignant desert birds. There are desert birds who are indignant. Indignant here conveys the birds are angry and fearful at the same time. The birds are indignant. They are not feeling good. They are fearful and angry, and such type of such birds who are angry and fearful, they are fluttering around, they are hovering around this creature, and the creature is moving slowly. This image speaker has experienced in his collective consciousness. Next, the darkness drops again. Now the speaker comes back in his physical body, physical consciousness. He has come out from his collective consciousness, from his spiritus mundi. The darkness drops again. But now I know. But now I know conveys that speaker is saying that this experience, this visualization was so powerful that I cannot forget it. It is still concrete in my mind, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were waxed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. Now what does these two lines mean? Now speaker is figuring out that what this creature's arrival, or its slow motion, its moving, what it conveys. That speaker is saying that 20 centuries, 2000 years of stony sleep, that world was, that this human civilization which was in current when Yeats was writing it, that up to now this human civilization was in deep sleep, but now that sleep, wax means irritated, now this sleep has been disturbed. Who has disturbed it? To nightmare. And this disturb now to nightmare, what nightmare suggests? That this disruption in the sleep, this interruption in the sleep is not a bringer of good things. It is nightmarish. By a rocking cradle. Now the sleep has been disturbed by rocking, by shattering, by shaking, by shattering the cradle. Cradle means human civilization. So it conveys that by human himself, by the noises of his incessant wars, humans are engaged in wars, and due to the noises of those wars, now this next era, which is nightmarish, which is not so good, he is not thinking the coming arrival of new era in very positive light. So he is saying this coming of nightmare has was sleeping, arrival was in 20 centuries of stony sleep were waxed, it is interrupted to nightmare by a rocking cradle. So the noises of all the wars are responsible for interrupting the stony sleep of this 20 centuries sleep. And what rough beast. And now Yeats has given an embodiment, he has given a picture, a figure to this abstract idea of arrival of cruel, tyrannical, cynical and very ferocious age. What image he has given? That this is like a rough beast which he has he has visualized one sphinx, which is a beast, and that beast is representing the arrival of a new era, which is not like second coming of the Christ, which is who is a savior, but in contrast, this coming of new era is bringer of more tumultuousness, more turbulence. And what rough beast? Its hour come round at last. At last, it is on its way. It is about to come. Slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Bethlehem is a place where Jesus Christ was born. Slouches is a motion, is a movement which is clumsy, which is not so dignified. Very slowly and clumsily it is moving, it is stepping towards Bethlehem to be born, means it is about to take place, it is now taking about to take birth. But at Bethlehem is a place where Jesus Christ was born, and it is in the very contrast of the biblical revelation, biblical prophecy, that Christ will return in order to save the worthy. What is Who is returning, who is taking place? So this ending of the poem is leaving the readers in awe, and it is very climax. This poem has come to an end, very climactic situation it is, and we have been left here that what type of age it is. Though Yeats have given many hints, he has signaled, he is has a foreboding about, he is foreboding about something which is not so good, which is nightmarish, which is dark, which is cruel. So here these all hints have been planted or sown by Yeats, and we can sense that the coming of the era, there is a coming of new era, new civilization, which is not so good, which is not so hopeful, and very pessimistic and very depressed uh, picture has been painted by Yeats in this whole uh, poem. And now let's talk about the stylistic devices. If we talk about the form and meter, it is written in very loose iambic pentameter, means it is there is no consistent iambic pentameter in it. At some places we will find it, but at other there is no rhythm or no this proper set of rhyme scheme or rhythm. So we can say it is a kind of free verse. It is written in very rough iambic pentameter. If we talk about metaphors, then metaphors, as you know, it is an implied comparison. Any term or phrase is applied to something uh, to give a kind of resemblance, though they are not relatable. So here falcon is not relatable to humanity, it is a bird, but here to give it a kind of resemblance, that falcon and the falconer, falcon is representing here humanity, human civilization, falconer is its controller. It can be in the form of direction, leadership, in the form of creative forces which directs human, it in the form of moral or ethical standards, or it can be god. Blood dimmed tide, blood dimmed tide is a direct reference to violence and bloodshed, massacre. Ceremony of innocence is also the celebration of purity, which is no more now. Rough beast is a direct embodiment of the coming age, which is cruel and which is cynical. Stylistic devices, alliteration. Alliteration is a figure of speech of repetition of consonant sound at the beginning of the words. And here we can see turning and turning, darkness drops, stony sleep. These all are the examples of alliteration. And there is a repetition of words also. And it seems that to give a poem a musical quality, a lyrical quality, a sing song uh, kind of touch, Yeats has repeated some words. And one more thing, that to express the nervousness and the uneasiness of the speaker, also there is a repetition of the words. So here these three words and some more you can find out. are repeated: loosed, surely, the second coming, we can see. And there is hyperbole in this line. Hyperbole is an overstatement, exaggeration of something, and it is done by the writer or poet to emphasizing, to make his point more clear. So here hyperbole in this, there is hyperbole in this line: surely the second coming is at hand. Now the second coming is something which is related to biblical level, and Yeats is so much confident, and that he is claiming that surely the second coming is at hand. It seems that he is emphasizing his point. And though it this statement is called hyperbolic, but ironically, one more thing I want to clear here, that it was a time of World War First, and it seems that Yeats was able to foresee that second coming is about to happen. After the World War, people were used to assume, people were is assuming that now any such destruction will never happen, because World War First is also called the end of all wars. But we all have witnessed the history that after the World War First, World War Second happened, and again the mass destruction, which was mm, already happened in World War First. So after the World War First, if Yeats was saying surely the second coming is at hand, at that time it seemed that it is somewhat exaggerated, but it proved to be very true, because the second coming happened as many wars took place even after the World War First. So that's all for today. Thank you for your attention.